have a tail. It's great. I can wiggle. The tail actually is pretty sturdy. I'm able to use it pretty well. I've disassembled some grocery bags just by cutting them apart and laying it out. And then I've sketched out a rough outline of what I think the tail will look like and what length I want it to be. Because this is going to be two-tone, this will be the bottom color and this will be the top color. I do need to change the pattern. So now that I have this cut out, I'm cutting it on an old bed sheet that I got from a thrift store, and then I'll sew that together and then cut it in half again. I finished cutting and I'm going to pin the edges together so then I can sew it and then separate it and cut. When I cut it, I made sure to have an allowance so that I have an area to sew. And as I go, remove the pins and keep it going. Oops, don't do that. Got a little excited. Let me just, no one saw that. Back over we go. And now I've finished showing. I will be inverting this, including the little tail at the end, using a pencil or shoving some scissors down in there to poke it out. Now I have a tail. Oh. Very thick because that's what the character has. It's dark, but you can see the general idea that it will be connected here, and there's a little bit of a curve. I'm lining up the sewn fabric, so each side. It's easy to tell if you're doing it right by poking a pin through one seam and then to the other side. And back. Ow! Don't poke yourself though. I'm flipping to the other end before I finish to make sure I get the approximation of the lines down correctly. Because this is not a perfectly lined up end. So. That's my best lizard impression. After pinning everything along the edges, what you do is you just start to cut along. Now when that happens, because there is the natural curve to this, it will cut jagged edges. That's okay. The length of this is actually pretty good. What happens is you're gonna lay this top part, which as you can tell is a lot thinner than this one, onto the shiny green fabric. That's going to be like the scaly part, the top. And then you're going to lay this part on the bottom, which I recommend a suede to give it a more leathery texture. And you're going to want to cut it out. How do you reconcile these things? No, you don't cut into them like this, but rather you want to try and average them. But that is why we went through all the trouble to make this pattern. Yay! I now successfully have one portion cut out on this very pretty fabric. I have successfully cut out a giant piece of suede. I put pins at the end of each pattern before I undid everything to make it so that I would know where they need to line up. This will allow me to pin everything together with a lot more ease. And I have the right sides together, and I will start pinning so that each edge is together because this bottom part is a lot wider, so I'll need to make sure that I scrunch it up and get it to both sides. I work my way through pinning here, pinning at the end, pinning in the middle, then pinning in the middle of that, and I'm gonna pin in the middle of that. And now to sew. changing out the thread because I have shiny butter. I've laid out the tail, and now I'm laying over this thick material, which usually is used for batting or something like that when you're making a quilt. But my quilt is a tail. And I'm gonna cut out a cone to add that extra thickness to the skin. I've added in a long strip of wire that goes down, folds, and goes back up. And I have it connected at this little extra piece of foam. And it's sandwiching this to the actual outside fabric. Now I'm going to put in another piece of wire so I can have that at the top and bottom. So there will be a total of 4 in a way, although just 2 long pieces. Then those will be really held in place by the foam that I'll be inserting, or the filler. I've just unwrapped another piece of wire with a little bit of excess ends to make sure I can wrap it around something. And I will insert it through after tightening up the curve on the end here with some pliers. So what I'm going to be doing is identifying the end of the wires. There are 2 loops because I looped it through twice. I'll be sewing the very tips of the loops at the end, and then making sure to put my thread through the thread stitch that's already there. So I can use either a dark one or a light one to match the top or bottom. I'm going to go with the dark so that it matches the top in case it goes through, so then it at least is cohesive with the thread I already used. Stuffing time! Oh man. Gonna have to fully shove... Ooh. I have to shove my arm all the way down. I have successfully stuffed 32 ounces or 2 pounds of polyfill into this bad boy. Wow! And I still have a little bit more left to do, so I'm going to open up the other bag. And as I've been going, I've been making sure that I have a wire at the top, a wire on the side, on this side, and at the bottom. So that way I can move it around. And just so you know, the free poly stuffing tool that's included, it's literally just 1 chopstick. So use what you have around you, because I mean, a chopstick is great. Testing out ways to attach a tail. I have the belt around my waist instead of my hips, and then we go like that. But if I have it attached up higher, it would be much more preferable. I de-stuffed it halfway, and then I am starting to curl it because I learned that it's easier to curl without the stuffing, because obviously that will prevent it from going to a nice curve. So determine how curved you want it and start doing so before it is fully stuffed. I finished stuffing and actually added a bit more into it, and I finished curving it. Then I took the wires, so there's the top, bottom, side, and side that are within this sort of insulation. And then I'm wrapping them into the center, so just with my hands taking it and folding it over until it's sort of bent and they're all in a different direction. Still the top, bottom, and both sides. And now I am folding over the insulation, and I'm going to sew it in place, keeping in mind where each point is so that it will be then pulled to the side so I can form loops for a buckle to go through. I've sewn along the edges, and I'll be doing a little bit of reinforcing like I did over here and to over there, and everything's all sewed together so there aren't any holes. Now it's a little bit sturdier, so I can stick something through here. Of course, you see that the wiring is a little exposed, so I'm going to have to put something on there to fix it. And I have it propped up between my bed and my chair so it sort of maintains the curl. Woohoo! Now there's a nice cover on it So we're gonna stick through a belt that I got from Goodwill, just a nice wide cheap one. I'm gonna stick it through. Alrighty. So it loops down a little bit. As shown in the video, it does stay up on its own, but just to make sure it doesn't drag along the floor of a con that much. So this is after one con use. You can add a piece of wire, a fishing wire to be precise, to add the extra curl to lift it up. So you just tie it on the base, knot it up a few times, and tie it up on the belt. Because, at least with Tohru, there's that giant skirt, it's okay and it can go underneath it, but then also with other costumes, I mean, it's fine, it's just a little bit of wire.